Good afternoon, everyone. Today I'm releasing the Coalition Government's final government policy statement on land transport, a $22 billion plan over the next 3 years, which will deliver on our commitments. This GPS confirms the government's ambitious plan to boost productivity and economic growth. The GPS brings back the successful roads of national significance so New Zealand can have a long-term pipeline of investment in roading upgrades which will help ensure New Zealanders can get where they need to go quickly and safely. The GPS also includes an additional $1 billion allocated in Budget 24 to support the acceleration of these roads and major public transport projects. The NZTA will now develop the National Land Transport Plan to deliver on the government's objectives, which will be released in early September. The GPS is already delivering for New Zealanders, with the NZTA board already confirming a 91% increase in funding for NZTA to fix and prevent potholes on state highways, a 50% boost for local councils to fix and prevent potholes on local roads, and a 41% boost for public transport services to help Kiwis have travel choices, particularly in our main cities. The government will also be delivering significant investment in recovering roads damaged by the North Island weather events, with almost $1 billion allocated towards this in Budget 24, alongside a significant investment in ensuring that our metropolitan rail networks are brought up to a higher standard to reduce disruptions and prepare for the opening of the City Rail Link. This government is a government of infrastructure and a government of delivery, and I look forward to this government policy statement on land transport delivering better transport outcomes for all New Zealanders. Happy to take any questions. Well, the budget has made a number of key decisions. There's been a significant increase capital allocation in the budget towards the roads of national significance and public transport. There's also been funding for the cyclone recovery, which is really critically important for the East Coast, and I acknowledge the concern they're facing at the moment. This funds the full recovery of the state highway network and a significant portion of the local road recovery that's needed there. There's also been further allocation towards rail and metropolitan rail so that we're able to get those, particularly the metropolitan rail networks, up to the standard, and in Auckland, up to the standard needed for the opening of the City Rail Link. Absolutely. It's doing significantly more. There's about $2.6 billion in additional investment outlined in the budget. That flows through to better transport outcomes in roads, public transport and rail across New Zealand.
The increase in rail funding, is that a reality of being in government in New Zealand today?
No, ultimately we are underway with the rail network improvement program with KiwiRail. This ensures they've got the funding needed for the next couple of years while we negotiate that, and it means that the maintenance and important work that's underway can continue. In Auckland and in Wellington, it's about making sure that our metropolitan networks actually are able to be at a standard which is more reliable, and that's something which commuters in Auckland and Wellington have been incredibly concerned about in recent months and years.
You've been very critical of maintenance, heavy rail maintenance.
Yes.
Tracks. So how are you going to ensure that the extra money
Yep.
will actually go towards maintaining them in a way that we offer?
Well, that's where we're underway with KiwiRail to develop the rail network improvement program. That is the government's opportunity to ensure that that money is going to the most important parts in the rail system, so we operate a reliable system for New Zealanders, whether that's freight or commuters. That program is underway, and that will be released later this year. And ultimately, as the Minister of Finance has said, we're going to be refreshing the board of KiwiRail, because actually we need to make sure they're accountable for the significant investment that they have, and that it is focused on achieving outcomes for New Zealanders.
And you're also you're going to be confirming the tax bill increases from 2027, correct?
Yep.
So 12 cents a litre, and then you're also confirming that the vehicle registration will be increasing?
Correct.
And so just running up those numbers, that's about $7.70 per week extra if you're going through a tank of petrol a week, and then you buy into the vehicle registration. So that's an extra $7.70 that you pile on households there. But the minimum wage worker will only get about $12.50 back in tax cuts. More than half of that is going to be eaten up by these increases you're taking on. So are these people actually better off?
Well, I'd make the point really clearly that we have kept to our commitment pre-election to not increase fuel excise or road user charges during this term. Those fuel excise increases start on the 1st of January 2027. So for New Zealanders filling up their tank any time between now and then, we're not increasing fuel excise duty or road user charges between now and 1 January 2027. And in fact, in Auckland, on Monday, the regional fuel tax will be removed.
Isn't that going to be brutal? The start of 2027, they just slam straight into
Well,
essentially 3 years of taxing.
Well, ultimately, we need to make sure we've got a sustainable funding model so we can continue to invest in the maintenance and the operations and the new roading infrastructure that New Zealanders expect. And the costs of that have increased. The decisions within this GPS ensure that we do not have to have a significant increase in fuel excise or road user charges over the next 3 years. But at the same time, we have also set very clearly in policy the ability to ensure that this fund is sustainable in the long term, which is critically important.
Your critics will say that this GPS doesn't contain enough funding for cycle lanes, for public transport. How would you react to that?
Well, we're committed to, in the coalition agreement with New Zealand First, to have less money going into cycle lanes. And I think most New Zealanders have seen over the last few years the priorities being in the wrong places with, cycle bridges and cycle lanes when our roads are falling apart. So we're focused on the basics, getting back to basics. The pothole prevention funds ring-fence that money to the fixing potholes, resealing our roads, rehabilitating them. Those are the reasons, those are the things New Zealanders pay their petrol taxes and road user charges for. This prioritises those outcomes.
You put that back on New Zealand First, saying that it's something that they wanted. Did you not also want...
Well, I did too, and we've made that very clear, that we are reducing the amount of funding for cycleways. And the key thing I'd also like to highlight is we've actually listened, though, to some of the submissions from particularly Living Streets Aotearoa, where they've actually said we need to ensure a portion of the money in walking and cycling actually goes towards walking activities and not just all going towards cycling. So we've actually said in the final GPS that a minimum of a quarter of that fund needs to go to activities which promote walking.
Yeah, and just with your, with your local government hat on, what do you make of Wellington Council agreeing to sell the airport shares?
I mean, ultimately, the council is elected to make decisions around their budget, and they've done their job today.
But do you think, as a minister for local government, that council should ever own shares in something like an airport?
Well, look, I think that's ultimately those are all decisions for councils to make, and when they're looking at decisions around their long-term plan, asset recycling, all of those issues should be on the table as they make those decisions. And I just acknowledge and congratulate them on getting their long-term plan passed. I think primarily what you've seen here is an increase in investment into transport. No, I don't think there was anything that didn't make it. We've had an increase in investment across a number of areas to ensure that this government is able to set a clear pipeline of infrastructure investment and provide that confidence that's needed to the sector, but also to New Zealanders, that we're a government which is going to deliver for infrastructure. We're going through the policy development process as we speak.
So can you give them any...
I can't provide timelines at this. I can't provide timelines. Ultimately, we have to create legislation, and we've committed to time of use charging in Auckland. It's something that the Mayor has been calling for. It's something that we've got in the coalition agreement with the ACT Party, and ultimately we're going through a policy development process, and we'll have more to say about that in coming weeks. Well, ultimately the legislation will be enabling, but the coalition agreement with ACT is about Auckland, but we're developing enabling legislation and we're making policy decisions at the moment. Well, all of those things are being discussed at the moment. There's obviously a policy process underway to ensure we get good legislation in place. Yeah, well, all those decisions are getting made as we go through I'm not going to pre-announce decisions. There are decisions that are being made, and when they're made, we'll let you know.
Well, who's going to be better off? And Auckland are currently driving around paying the Auckland regional fuel tax, or in Auckland are driving without the regional fuel tax, they're having to pay congestion charging to get to work?
Well, ultimately, what we're saying on the 1st of July, Aucklanders will no longer be paying a regional fuel tax.
Unknown amount in congestion charging.
Well, I mean, ultimately, policy decisions on that haven't been made. That is a tool which we've made very clear in the language we have been saying. It's not about revenue collection, it's about efficiency of the network. Those are policy decisions which are currently underway. When those decisions are made, we'll let you know. Well, I'll just say the regional fuel tax is getting removed on the 1st of July, and that is great news for Aucklanders.
Could you answer the question? Is it going to be more expensive
Well,
to drive in Auckland with a congestion charge or a regional fuel tax?
well, policy decisions haven't been made. Once policy decisions have been made, we'll let you know. But ultimately, on the 1st,
Should be able to give a guarantee.
on Monday, Aucklanders will no longer have to pay the Auckland regional fuel
Is
tax.
it going to be cheaper?
Aucklanders will no longer have to pay the regional fuel tax. Well, ultimately, those policy decisions have not yet been made in terms of the congestion charge. It's an enabling piece of legislation.
Know, though, about how much you're expecting to be charging for congestion.
Well, there's a range of estimates in terms of how you can model, and policy decisions ultimately will lead to different outcomes. We have not made any we have not made,
Incentivize people to travel
but we haven't made any policy decisions. This is GPS, is about investing in the transport infrastructure that New Zealanders need. We're removing the Auckland regional fuel tax. We are ensuring that there's no increase in RUC or FED over the next 3 years. This is good news for Aucklanders. Yeah. Well, we've already announced the allocation towards public transport services. There's a 41% increase in public transport services funding in this budget. It is in this GPS. That is a significant boost towards public transport services, and all of those issues that they raised will no longer be issues, because this is a significant investment in public transport services. Right from the start, I knew there'd be adequate funding to ensure a significant increase in funding for public transport services, and that's what we've delivered. No, this is delivered. I think we've delivered almost 100% of what Auckland Transport bid for public transport services.
Just going back to the congestion charges, you said there were a range of estimates. Is the highest estimate a lower cost than the regional fuel tax?
Well, look, there is policy work underway at this stage in regards to time of use charging, and ultimately all of those. Ultimately, there's all sorts of hypotheticals. You can read about it in terms of. There's been a number of reports already been released on this particular subject, and until policy decisions have been made, there is no numbers. Yes, if you look at there's a lot of reports that have been released on this subject with a lot of different options. Ultimately, what we're saying at this stage is we're developing policy, and it has to go through the appropriate policy process. Well, we're going through the policy process in relation to that at this stage.
What's the time frame?
Well, we're working through that at the moment.
When you said coming weeks, I mean, I hate to be didactic, but can you give
I can't give you a particular time indication at this stage, but I say there is a process underway in terms of making decisions in terms of that. It's a coalition commitment. We've committed to it. Policy work's underway.
There's also one measly paragraph dedicated to the additional harbour crossing in Auckland. What's your plan for that?
Well, there's work underway in relation to the additional Waitemata harbour crossing. It's a commitment, but there's significant work that needs to be done in terms of what type of procurement model, design. There's work that hasn't been done around geological understanding what's actually under the water. There's a huge amount of work that needs to be done. This GPS commits and says we're going to continue with that work because it's critically important for the future of Auckland. But in terms of the specific... Well, it's something which we're committed to as a major infrastructure project in Auckland. But ultimately, how you fund, and we've also said very clearly in this GPS, we expect the agency to look at all funding and financing options in terms of actually delivering major infrastructure like that project across New Zealand. So that is a project which I think the agency needs to spend more time looking at, and we've made our expectations clear to them around how they can fund and finance it. Well, the reality is there's work underway on both of those projects. The National Land Transport Program, which is being developed and will be released in early September, will provide more clarity around those timings. Well, look, I've always made it very clear. My expectation is that the councillors act to make decisions. They are democratically elected. My criticism last week was not of the councillors, it was of the CEO, who was acting in a way which was not providing adequate information to councillors. So my concern there, and I was pleased to see that she responded by removing the policy which was of concern. My concern there was with the CEO, and CEOs, by the way, of councils are not elected. Councillors and mayors are.
You might not have heard the morning report this morning.
Sorry, I didn't listen to the morning report this morning.
The mayor of Wellington was on there saying, confirming what is widely held, sort of belief in Wellington, was that if they didn't pass the LTP, the commissioner would have been called in. Was the commissioner going to be called in if the LTP didn't pass?
Well, one, that's a hypothetical, but two, they are democratically elected to make decisions. That is their job. They are elected as councillors and a mayor to sit around that table and make decisions, and that's exactly what they did today.
Is it good value for money, spending $200 million on rail maintenance if you are yet to make a decision as to whether to rail enable the ferries, and if you don't rail enable the ferries, basically the railways are obsolete?
Well, if you look at the rail freight network across New Zealand, the most important part of that is actually between Auckland, Hamilton and Tauranga. I think it's around half the freight between Auckland and Tauranga goes on rail. And it's really important that we maintain those tracks and other tracks which are critically important to our economy to a high standard. And so we are going to... it's ring-fenced for the rail network, but we've highlighted in the draft GPS, in the final GPS, that the Golden Triangle is of critical importance because of how much freight it carries, the population growth in that area, and how we need to continue to invest, particularly in that part of the network. Well, ultimately, those are decisions that the shareholding ministers, in terms of the ferry and the next steps on that, have to make. But what this GPS delivers is a significant investment in major transport projects, but also an increase in maintenance. And that's what we've seen across our network, our roading network over the last few years, is we haven't seen that level of investment in maintaining our roads. And that's why we're ring-fencing the pothole prevention fund to resealing the roads, rehabilitating it, making sure that we're doing the drainage and keeping the water off the road. That makes it able to withstand the weather, withstand the vehicles, and actually last longer, which is really, really important. Well, ultimately, if you look around the world, when you have ferry systems like that, rail and ferries can integrate without the ferries having to be rail-enabled. So there's decisions that need to be made. Shareholding ministers are considering advice on those issues at the moment. But what I put it to you is the rail enablement of those ferries was driving significant cost on the landside infrastructure, which meant that the ferries were only 20% of that overall project. And so we're having a look at that, and we've got a commitment to new ferries, but that work is being undertaken. No, absolutely, and there's significant investment in this GPS for rail, and there's significant rail, particularly from the west coast through Christchurch. That rail plays a really important role. So there's a huge investment in rail. We're undertaking a rail network improvement plan as part of the RNZ, which is required under law. That work's underway.
Will all the roads have national significance and toll roads?
Well, we've made it very clear where we've recommended they should be a toll road. We'll toll them. Well, I imagine we'll be tolling every single one of them, which is a recommendation, and I can't see any of them not being recommended. I mean, I think basically Chris and I are saying exactly the same thing, which is that we will be tolling the roads of national significance to help fund them, and that is something which we haven't done in the past as much as a country, and we will be doing in the future, because New Zealanders need this infrastructure investment, and we're going to make sure we've got the funding and financing tools in place to deliver them.
You talked a lot about road
One last.
What about all of the safety upgrade work that was happening? Are you still committed to grade separating a lot of our major roads?
Well, the roads of national significance will be grade separated, and so we've made it very clear that's about grade separating those. Absolutely, and that's why we're putting a huge amount of money into increasing investment in road maintenance. That is a critical part of making sure our roads are safe. And there is funding for safety upgrades, and the agency will make those decisions on a case-by-case basis across the country, looking at a range of methods to improve safety, as they always do. Thank you very much.